Okay, in an effort that things never seem good enough, um, I was kind of looking at the way the gun operates, and I noticed some of the resistance I feel in the trigger is while the cylinder is rotating. So while we greatly improved the double action trigger pull from 11 to 12 pounds, and now we're down to 9 to 10, I still notice while the cylinder is rotating, I can feel that in the trigger. And I started to wonder if possibly the hand on the trigger maybe could use a little bit more stoning on some of its faces. So in that, keeping that all in mind, we're back into the gun. And we're going to take a look at the hand on the trigger and see if we can possibly smooth it up at all to help the double action pull, even though the actual pull is much less than what it was before, to try and smooth it out just a bit more. Okay. Okay, the area that we're thinking about that might be causing some of the roughness is on the hand, right on this little front area where it goes into the slot into the frame. We were thinking that perhaps it might be rubbing right there, and as it's trying to push the cylinder around, that roughness on the front of the hand could be something that I would feel in the trigger. Taking a look at it though, it looks like there's a little bit of an air gap here, so therefore the front of the hand may not be touching the frame at all. It might be pivoting. Okay, it might be pivoting off of pushing on the cylinder and then the pivot pin right here for the hand. We're going to just assemble it and take a look and see if there's anything that we can see where maybe there's any roughness that can be smoothed out, and possibly consider polishing the pin that engages into the trigger from the hand. The smoother that would be, the less friction you'll feel. So that's where we're at right now. Okay, what I've done here is I've taken the cylinder stop and I just put a little Q-tip stick in there to hold it disengaged, and I wanted to check the cylinder rotation to see if the stickiness that I was feeling is actually in the cylinder. There was one spot that I thought I felt, but right now it feels pretty consistent, and as I rotate it slowly, I really can't pick up that spot anymore. So it might have just been touching up front here. I think this is when it's sprung forward, the cylinder gap on this thing is only a thousandths, but you can actually preload it back. It's being held forward by the bolt, and it actually measures 5 thousandths for cylinder gap. But like I say, the source of the friction that I think I'm feeling, I don't know if it's coming from the bearing surfaces of the cylinder. One thing I did notice was when I look at the hand, you can see some roughness, but I'm not 100% sure that the roughness, you might not be able to see it on this, but the roughness on that hand is a contact point. I'm going to smooth it out anyhow, and I think I'm going to try and polish the bearing pin with some just a cotton buff and maybe some mothers or something, just to put a higher sheen on it. I'm going to take a look at it first before I attempt that. But I'm going to try and smooth out the front of the hand a little bit. And so much for this. The roughness that I'm feeling does not feel like it's coming from the cylinder. Maybe it's just all these parts trying to move together. Maybe I'm trying to do too good on this thing. Maybe the 9-pound double action pull is reasonable. But I have another revolver, and I tell you, it's buttery smooth when you pull the trigger on that thing. It's just buttery smooth. My other thought was maybe because this has a 10-round chamber, that has a difference in the way the trigger feels. The other revolver is a much larger revolver. I believe it's an N frame. Buttery smooth. I think possibly it could be the effect of the 10 rounds. Well, we're going to try and get this stuff smoothed out, the front of that hand, and we're going to get a good look at that. Cylinder feels pretty good. So, there you go. Okay, one thing we did do is we took a stone to this area right here on the frame. That's the bearing surface where the cylinder rides. So here's the mating bearing surface of the cylinder, and that rides right here on the frame. So we just took a hard Arkansas stone. We got a black one here. These are triangle stones, and 2 whites. And we just smooth that out on the frame in case there was any rumbles, bumps, or whatever, just to allow this bearing surface to turn as smooth as it possibly can, get the most engagement. But that was one other thing we noticed, that we thought we'd put it on video. Alright, here we are. We did some polishing on this thing. We used a little Dremel type tool and some Dremel. Basically the ones that we used were we had a couple of cotton buffs, and there was one I believe in a kit, and then we had these also in a kit with these brushes. We also used some cotton swabs, but basically what we did was we polished the inside here where the hand goes up and down. So we took that brush right there and we worked it with mothers. There's some mothers here, and we worked it up and down inside this slot where the hand works, not hoping not to remove any material, but just to smooth out any roughness. And there was, you can see the machining marks in there, so hopefully we got most of the machining marks smoothed out so that at least they're just high points instead of rough points. So we worked that. We also, as long as we're in here, we took one of the buffs and we just ran it right around this face where the trigger rides. I'm sorry, where the hammer rides. I keep saying trigger. Anyhow, where the hammer rides, we just buffed that lightly. We also, this is where we stoned yesterday, so we used the buff, and I think we used that 3/8 buff there. And we hit both the bottom face and the side face. And then we lightly touched the area where the trigger pin is. Those reams, those face reamers did a real nice job, but this will bring it to a mirror hopefully, or close enough. Once again, our concern today was trying to get this where the hand rides nice and smooth in there. And then we're going to try and do a little bit to the hand possibly to smooth it out. Okay, the frame has been cleaned up. Again, you can see this is highly polished in here and down there. That was more for, I guess, an effect, maybe a little bit. One thing I can say is when I run a cotton swab on it, it definitely feels slick. Again, we polished this area right here, which is where the hammer rides. It's this, it's a seat for the hammer that it rides on. We also polished the slot where the hand goes up and down, again with the cotton swab, feeling for any resistance or drag. It's nice and slick. I don't think we removed much material, if any at all. We also polished the area where the cylinder seats, again with the cotton swab. It slick as snot, it just slides right on that thing. So that might be a good addition. So that's what that is. Next we're going to start looking at the hand. This is all cleaned up, ready for assembly. We're going to look at the hand, see if there's anything on the hand that we can stone or polish, and we're going to get this thing back together. Okay, we're about ready to put this thing back together again, and once again the frame's all cleaned up. We did work the hand over. On the hand, we stoned the surface first, and then we took the Dremel and we just polished it lightly. We also stoned the face of the hand where it rides against the frame. You probably can't see this with this camera, but it's almost like milling marks are on that. So that could have been affecting it the way it operates and the way it feels. I think the way that the hand actually works, though, is as the trigger is pulled up, this side, because it's on the right side of the cylinder, is pushed against the right side of the frame slot. Let's see if I can get this in here. But the frame slot there, and it's pushed against the right side of that frame slot, because it's pushing on the right side of the cylinder trying to get it to go up. And any roughness on that right side of the frame slot or the right side of the hand is picked up in the trigger feel. On the trigger itself, we initially mentioned after we got it back together that we felt that clunk, so we stoned the face that goes against the cylinder lock very lightly just to clean it up. And there's a bevel on that, we stoned that as well. So we're hoping the clunk wasn't, it was on the reset of the trigger, which is probably normal, but this might lessen it a little bit. Also on the bolt, the cylinder bolt, since we had it out, because we had to clean this thing really well, we stoned the entire face there where the hammer can rub against it. This should set below the hammer, but there's nothing to stop it from coming up and touching it and allowing the hammer to rub against it. And on a double action trigger pull, you're going to feel that. So we stoned that. Other than that, I think we're ready to put it back together. If I know anything else, I'll get it on a video before we start assembly. We're starting assembly now. The first part that we've put back in is the bolt, cylinder bolt. That's already been installed, and the nut and not lever but button on the other side have been tightened up. The next thing that'll go in is the cylinder and crane, and then after the cylinder and crane, the trigger assembly. That should then give us the ability to squeeze the trigger and see what it feels like pushing the cylinder around the inside. So we'll get that done and we'll be back. Cylinder's been installed, cylinder and crane, the trigger, the hand, and the rebound slide and its spring have been installed. This is the 11-pound spring. We're going to see where this ends up. One thing you can do to check to make sure things are working correctly is pull the trigger, and what should happen is the cylinder should rotate and the stop should go back up. So what this indicates, if you have some resistance on the cylinder, that should tell you that the stop is fully engaging. So that's one of the checks that you can do for a revolver, is just to slightly put pressure with your hand on the cylinder and pull the trigger. Obviously you want to have snap caps if it's this gun, or mollies or whatever, but pull the trigger on it and ensure that the cylinder stop is engaging each time. If it's not, that means the timing on your gun's a little bit off or something's not right. And being that we stoned this hand, albeit just a little bit and a little bit of polish, we still need to check to make sure that our cylinder stop is engaging the cylinder so that our timing on our barrel and cylinder are correct. So this one looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead and get the hammer into it and continue on. Okay, the hammer and mainspring have been installed, and now we're ready for the side plate and the hammer block bar. That should put this thing back together, and then we can put the mollies in it and see what she feels like. Hopefully I got an improved feel on that double action as you're pulling through and the cylinders rotating. Weight wise, I had no complaints, but I was just trying to get it as good as I possibly can. Another thing, we've been lubricating this with Hoppy's number 9. I'd be interested. I tried the synthetic. That stuff, after a while, it starts to feel like glue to me. So I'm not real impressed with the, I think it's Hoppy's number 9 synthetic. If you guys know any good oil to use on the internals here, I'd be interested to know. Maybe you can post a comment. But not crazy about Hoppy's number 9 synthetic. The standard seems better. That synthetic seems to turn to glue or becomes sticky or has drag to it after it ages a little bit. Anyhow, we're gonna get side plate on this, get the mollies in it, and see what she feels like. The gun's back together. I think there's a slight improvement over what it was. Not day and night, but a slight improvement. It does feel smoother when you pull the trigger. She's rotated around, and she locks up well. But you can see it kind of little bit, and then now, little bit, now. So in that regard, it's not exactly what its big brother will do. The big brother here just kind of, I don't know, this thing is an older gun. It's well shot, but the trigger just pulls right through. There's no little bit on this thing. Back to the 617. Could be that I'm doing it with my left hand and I'm right-handed, and maybe I got more control with my. But it's better than what it just was. So the extra polishing did help. It was worth it. We'll get it to the range. You know what I'll do next is I'll recheck the trigger pull on this thing, see if it changed, and I'll post it at the very end. Okay, here it is. It's all done. We did it. We measured the trigger pull. There was a. It's about the same. Actually, it looks like it may have gone up a touch on the double action. It climbs to about 9.5 pounds. I didn't pay attention on the earlier measurement, but it climbs to about 9.5 pounds, and then the cylinder starts moving, maybe a 9 3/8, but then the cylinder starts moving, and between the 9.5 and 10 pounds is when it goes bang. So it's pretty steady. It builds up to 9.5. Everything starts moving, and then bang. Single action again. From 2 1/8 to 2 3/4. I'm going to average that 2 3/8 on that single action. That trigger is right there. One other thing I did not mention. I'm not sure I did if I did or didn't, but I'm going to tell you about it now. Is this little tiny detent tip that sticks out? I polished that. When the cylinder is closed and it goes bang, this flat surface here is what the cylinder seats on against the frame. But that's when the bullet's going out. As it's turning on this gun, this cylinder, if I can get it closed up here, the cylinder sets forward. It's the spring that's behind the bolt actually is pushing forward on that. So if you look at the cylinder, you can actually see, well, maybe you can't see it on this camera, but if you're looking at it, with your eye, you can actually see movement. There you go. Maybe you can't see it on the cylinder. So that means that that little chit that was sticking out is what the cylinder is riding on when the cylinder is rotating. And that's why I polished it. If that's my bearing point, I want that to be as smooth as possible. I also polished the tip of the bolt so that if those are the two bearing surfaces in which it rides on as the cylinder rotates, I want those as slick as possible. So I polished both of those. But as you can see, numbers wise, I don't know. I think where the big difference is what you actually feel when you're pulling on that trigger. Like I said, there is an improvement after all of this polishing on the hand and that all the parts I just polished up. There's an improvement between that and the earlier trigger job, or yesterday's trigger job, I should say. So that all of that polishing did make an improvement. So yeah, it's definitely worth doing. So if you're going to do one of these, include that in on your little polish job. It's a bearing surface that when that cylinder is rolling around, that's that's the bearing surface you're working against. All right, that's it. I'm going to post both videos. I'll probably post this one as improvement or whatever, but the earlier one shows the disassembly, and then this kind of shows the assembly. So there you have it.